G'day, today on Garage It Yourself, I'm going to be showing you how to fit a leather cover to your steering wheel. So let's see how we do that. Welcome back to Garage It Yourself everyone, a channel dedicated to the DIY car enthusiast doing things on a budget. Today I'm going to be taking a look at how to fit a leather cover to your steering wheel, whether that be for your classic car or your daily driver. This one in particular is for my daily driver, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is the kit that you buy has to be relevant for the diameter of the wheel that you have and also the thickness of the wheel. There's also a couple of different stitching techniques. There's a really easy one, which doesn't take very long to do. And then the one I did is a little bit more difficult, but it's mainly much more time consuming to do. So yeah, let's get into it. Righto, so the first thing you're going to want to do before you go ahead and remove the steering wheel is you need to disconnect the battery and then leave the vehicle for a good 5 to 10 minutes, and that just allows any stray capacitance in the system to discharge, because you don't want the airbag firing in your face when you try and take it off. And then once you've allowed enough time for that to happen, then it's a case of finding where the airbag screws onto the steering wheel. It's different for every vehicle. On this one it's from behind by 2 screws. So you just find a way to get to them and undo them. And then once you've got it off, then you normally have to tug on it, because it's not just screwed on, it's like clipped on as well. Again, it depends on the vehicle, some might just be screwed on, but for this one in particular it's screwed and clipped on. And then once you've got it far enough away, don't yank on it too hard, because it's still plugged in and you need to unplug the airbag plug. And then once you've got the airbag plug undone, then it's just undoing the large securing nut or bolt in the center of the steering wheel. And with that out of the way, it'll either take a bit of a tug to get the steering wheel to come off, or in this case it just comes off quite easy. And then you can move on to actually doing the cover. Righto, things you're going to need to be able to do this. First of all is going to be a steering wheel cover kit. This is a genuine leather one, not PU leather. It just wears better and feels better. This one comes with 2 lots of thread and 2 needles. Then I also find just a household sewing kit is useful. In here, the thimble may be of use. And then there's also the needle threader, which is quite handy. And also a pair of needle nose pliers, which I found out as I was doing this. Righto, now you've got everything ready to go. You now need to think about what type of stitch you're going to be using to put the cover onto the steering wheel. The simplest and the easiest one and the quickest method is the simple cross stitch. This is where you use the edge stitching, which should already be sewn into your steering wheel cover kit. And all it does is you go underneath that stitching, as in the diagrams, and you just go side to side in a cross pattern. It's like I said, a simple cross stitch. The only thing that you need to be aware of when doing this cross stitch is how securely it is actually going to make the cover on the steering wheel, because if the cover can actually rotate on the steering wheel at all, then that will be a fail in countries where you have to have a yearly roadworthy inspection. So that's something to keep in mind when using this simple stitch. It's quick and easy, but it does have its drawbacks if the cover is not securely and tightly around the rim of the steering wheel. Now, because I'm using a generic steering wheel cover, because they no longer make one specifically for my vehicle, I decided that I wanted to use a more robust type of stitch to make sure that this generic cover was properly held to the steering wheel and I wouldn't have any problems with it slipping on there or rotating on there. So with that in mind, I used still a cross stitch, but instead of it going underneath the edge stitching and using the edge stitching to pull the edges together, I actually, with the new thread, went through the leather and then did the cross stitch. So all I did there was just utilizing the holes where the edge stitching has gone through and just going through each one of those holes and then going across and doing the cross stitch from side to side with the two bits of thread at the same time, not just using a single bit of thread. So the only downside to the stitching method that I decided to use is if you look at the diagram where the dotted lines are, that's where the thread is actually passing underneath the leather before it comes out the center seam and then goes on top and then goes back under again. So all that means is if you are using a colored thread that is different to the steering wheel cover, then it's going to be quite noticeable that it comes up and then goes under. There is a way around this, but for what I was doing, and I was quite happy with just using the black thread and not colored thread, it worked out perfectly fine. To start and stop the stitch at every single spoke, I found it best if you go directly across the spoke instead of starting the cross stitch, and then this just allows you to pull the leather over the top of the spoke together a lot tighter than if you start by just cross stitching. You also want to make sure for every cross stitch that you do that you pull on both of the threads very tightly and massage the wheel to get the edges of the cover to get as close together as possible. If you try doing multiple cross stitches and then pull, you'll find that the leather will not want to close up as easily as if you do it for every single stitch. And then it's really just a case of rinse and repeat. You just keep stitching along and pulling and stitching and pulling until you get to the end of the area and you do your horizontal cross stitch to tie things off, tie the thread in a knot, and then get on to the next section. Overall, it took me about 4 to 5 hours to do the stitching, probably not helped by the fact that the needles in the kit were completely blunt, so I did have trouble trying to get through the leather. But even so, it's a very time-consuming job, but worthwhile, I think, at the end of the day. With all the stitching now complete, it's then a case of turning your attention to the spoked areas where there is no stitching. This is just a simple case of using some contact adhesive on both surfaces, waiting for it to go tacky and then sticking them down. There was one spoke on the back of the steering wheel that had excess material, so this was just formed into a pig's ear cut off, and then with a combination of glue and stitching, it was firmly attached to the steering wheel. And there you go, folks, is your finished article, which is now ready for fitting back to the vehicle.
Installation is a reversal of removal.
Now consult your workshop manual so that you can find the steering wheel torque setting. Steering is under S. Yes.
Steering wheel. Actually, only 37 foot out. So there you go. Ta-da! Doesn't she look resplendent? So pretty. So good. So soft. Luscious. I like it. Feels pretty good. It's not going to slip. Hides the fact that this steering wheel has done over 200,000 kilometers and was getting very worn on the top edge. So, yeah, pretty happy with that. If you like the video, please hit the like button. If you think someone else that you know will find it useful, then please share it around. And of course, if you like what I get up to on my channel, then please subscribe. Okay, catch you on the flip side. Bye.